What is law? I mean, it sounds like a really simple question, doesn't it? But what if I told you the answer is actually a bit of a puzzle? Let's jump right in and see if we can piece it together.
So that's the big question, right? What is the general definition of law? I know. It sounds like something straight out of a first-year textbook. Super straightforward, and you probably already have an idea bubbling up in your head.
Hey, you're probably thinking along the right lines. Things like rules, justice, order. But what if the most accurate definition is also the simplest one? And maybe not quite what you'd expect. So yeah, let's treat this exactly like a puzzle we're going to solve together. Okay, so to solve this puzzle, we've got 4 main contenders for the title of Best Definition of Law. These are all taken from a legal source here in Australia, and our job is to put each one to the test and see which one, actually holds up. All right, first up, we have this one. A set of regulations that govern the behavior of society. Okay, seems like a pretty solid start, right? It's broad. It kind of gets to the heart of what law is supposed to do. Let's keep this one in mind and check out the next contender. Okay, contender number 2. This one gets a lot more specific. It says law is man-made rules and regulations enforced by the government elected by the people. See that last bit? Elected by the people? That's a really specific detail to throw in there.
And now for our third option, and wow, this one is easily the most detailed. It is a set of rules and regulations laid down by Parliament and the courts, which are backed by sanctions and enforced through a set of institution. Phew, that's a mouthful. It's really packing in a ton of info about how and where law gets made.
And finally, our fourth contender, which is also the simplest. These are rules and regulations enforced by the government. Short, sweet, to the point. So there you have it, our 4 options. It's like a Goldilocks situation. One's going to be too broad, a couple are going to be too specific, and one is going to be just right.
All right, now for the fun part. Let's actually put these definitions under the microscope. Sometimes the best way to find the right answer is to figure out why all the other ones are wrong. So let's start the process of elimination. Okay, let's circle back to that very first definition, a set of regulations that govern the behavior of society. The big question we have to ask ourselves is this: does this definition only talk about law? Or is the net it's casting a little too wide, maybe catching a few other things along the way? And this is where we see the problem. I mean, think about it. What about social norms like, not cutting in line at the grocery store, or religious rules, or even the rules of your local tennis club? All of those things govern the behavior of society for sure. But are they law? Nah, you're not going to get arrested for using the wrong fork at dinner, right? So that's the bottom line. This definition is just way too broad. It pulls in all these social customs and rules that aren't actually legally binding. And for that reason, contender number 1 is officially out of the running. Okay, on to the next one. These are man-made rules and regulations enforced by the government elected by the people. Remember that little phrase we flagged before? Elected by the people? That's the part we really need to pressure test. Just think back through history for a second. What about the Roman Empire? Were their laws not actually laws just because the emperor wasn't democratically elected? Or what about all the laws from kings and queens throughout the centuries? Of course they were laws. They were definitely enforced by whatever government was in power at the time. So, look, while most of us would probably prefer that our laws come from a government we elected, that's not a strict requirement for something to be a law. This definition is just too specific, it's too narrow. It basically says only democracies have laws, which just isn't true. So, contender number 2 is also eliminated.
Okay, 2 down, 2 to go. Let's check out that really detailed third option, the one that talked about Parliament and the courts. I mean, it sounds super official, right? Very comprehensive. But the real question is it universal?
Here's the thing. That definition does an amazing job of describing a common law system, like what we have in Australia or what they have in the UK and the US. But what about a system where, say, a king just issues a decree? That decree is the law of the land, but it didn't come from a parliament or a court. See the problem? And that's its fatal flaw. It's a perfect description of one type of legal system, but it's not a definition of law itself. It's confusing one specific example with the general idea. So unfortunately, we have to say goodbye to contender number 3 as well. Okay, so we've knocked out 1 for being too broad and 2 for being too narrow.
So where does that leave us? Well, by simple process of elimination, there can be only one left standing.
So let's finally take a look at our winner, the last one standing, the correct definition of law. And there it is. The best, most accurate, most general definition of law is simply this. These are rules and regulations enforced by the government. That's it. And it works because it avoids all the traps the others fell into. It's not too broad, and it's not too specific. It's just right. But you might be asking, why does this simple one work so well? What are the absolute essential ingredients here? Let's break it down real quick. It really comes down to just two core parts. You can't have law without them. First, you need the rules and regulations themselves, the what to do and what not to do. And second, those rules have to be enforced by the government, the group with the actual power to make people follow them. That's it. That's the whole shebang. So here's the big takeaway from all of this. At its most basic, the definition of law isn't actually about justice or morality or even democracy. It's about structure and power. It's a set of rules backed by the force of a government. But that leads us to a really deep question, doesn't it? If law is just rules enforced by the government, then what's the real difference between the rule of law and just the rule of raw power? And that's where this simple definition opens up a much, much bigger conversation. Definitely something to chew on.